even worse. We have to cut the carbon pollution that's driving the climate crisis, and that's what the Inflation Reduction Act is all about. It makes the largest investment in clean energy and climate action in the world, touching every sector: power, transportation, buildings, industry, agriculture, and forestry. It's reducing energy costs for hardworking Americans by offering $7,500 off qualifying electric vehicles and up to 30% off heat pumps and solar panels, which can lower monthly utility bills for families.
But now inflation has fallen every month since June 2022, and major Wall Street firms only see a dwindling prospect that higher interest rates will cause a recession this year, and stock indexes have climbed near levels not seen in more than a year. But with the Fed poised to raise the rates this week for the 11th time in 16 months, it's an open question of exactly how much their aggressive moves have tamed prices, and how much credit should go to other factors beyond the central bank's control. The distinction matters as the Fed debates how much higher to raise the rates and scans for signals that its policies are working, compounding the challenges that all the hikes up to now won't hit the economy with equal force or on a predictable time matter, meaning that more stimulus payments are necessary. Folks, we got a ton of news about the fourth stimulus check, Social Security benefits, SSI and SSDI. New Social Security update: the final batch of monthly payments are going to be sent out this week. Millions of Americans can expect to finally receive the check tomorrow. And several top lawmakers, including Chuck Schumer, are moving forward with a bill. These bills would improve the cost of living for retirees and seniors. And it's the final week of the Social Security Administration sending out payments for the month. If you haven't received a payment yet, it can arrive this week, depending on your date of birth and how long you've been receiving Social Security. If you receive SSI, you won't actually get a July check, and you should have received it. But for people back then, July 26th is the payment date for people with birthdays between the 21st and 31st of any given month. The average American 65 years age and up earns an annual pre-tax income of $55,000, and the same group spends a $52,000 yearly payment or $4,300 a month on things like that. That income doesn't lead to a lot of extra cash for the unexpected expenses or emergencies. The average American saved 65 to 69% and has about $200,000 in the retirement savings. And according to analysis from the Federal Reserve, many seniors might still need to work even when they reach a retirement age. Because health spending retirees make up an annual income of $7,000, and one way to cut costs when health issues arise is to get easily affordable preventive health care. Home costs represent the largest expense for retirees, accounting for 36% of their annual expenses. Experts say that retirees who want to gain a leg up may want to consider downsizing as prices could remain high. This can mean selling your current home for a profit, which leaves you room to stash away money for retirement, boost your emergency fund, or pay off debt. One drawback might be that you also pay a higher price for a replacement home in the market, and at $6,500, food prices account for over 12% of the annual increases in expenses for those 65 and older. But meal planning is one way to overspend, since it doesn't involve shopping for food items as opposed to regularly eating out. And also, major prescription pricing legislation to cap the cost of insulin is also in danger of falling. The legislation is a priority for Democrats, and Chuck Schumer has said that the hope was to combine the insulin bill and legislation reforming the pharmacy benefit manager industry. It will be a package that can get bipartisan support and a vote before the end of summer. In a press conference, he said that passing an insulin bill was a very high thing and a very high priority. The Senate lawmakers last week have already addressed this problem and begun taking up their version of their annual defense policy bill. The House pushed their more controversial and partisan version just more than a week ago, and senators intend to just start negotiating with the House by the end of the month. Still, several committees in both chambers are discussing this situation and have different ideas to reform pharmacy benefit managers, and senators said the credit to unborn children, and parents will be able to claim the credit from the year prior. The bill would also make the adoption tax credit fully refundable, and that credit is worth up to $15,000 in the current tax year for adoptions finalized in 2022. Other measures in the proposed package include an option allowing parents to draw from their Social Security to finance up to 3 months of paid parental leave, and enhancing certain benefits for new mothers. It also includes incentives for states to set up a guideline on fathers paying for part of a woman's pregnancy costs and would cost foster operation with any child support requirements. And according to the President's Council of Economic Advisors,
under a new bill, millions of older Americans could lose the food stamps. Lawmakers in the House have already proposed a bill that's going to make it harder for Americans to qualify. Some retirees may be forced to return to work, or risk of even losing the benefits. So now, this is really important news, everybody, that you have to know. People in every state would be impacted if the proposal becomes law, although residents of Alaska, South Carolina, and Oklahoma will be the hardest hit by this. According to the study on Center of Budget and Policy Priorities, the analysis is based on the number of households in those states that would fall under new work requirements, like older adults and families with children over 7. He's a Republican from South Dakota, and more than 20 other Republican lawmakers who introduced the bill say the America Works Act is needed to get more food stamp recipients back in the workforce. But research has shown that most recipients of SNAP that can work are already working. So far, the Republican bill is unlikely to make into law anytime soon, given that the Senate is controlled by the Democrats. Yet the push reflects efforts by GOP lawmakers to trim the spending and benefit programs like food stamps too. Almost 1 in 3 residents who currently receive food stamps in Alaska, South Carolina, and Oklahoma would be at risk of losing their SNAP. The least impacted recipients would be those in Washington, Idaho, and Vermont, where about 1 in 5 people are at risk of losing the food stamps, and that's something that's not good, because SNAP already has work requirements, and currently they're aimed at the so-called able-bodied adults. Under these rules, able adults are people who are not disabled, who don't have dependents, and who are already between 18 to 49. Plus, they must work 20 hours a week, or they must enroll in a work training program to receive food stamps. Under the GOP proposal, these work requirements would be expanded to adults between 50 and 65, which the lawmakers say they would align the program with Medicare. About 4 million children between 7 to 18 who live in households receiving food stamps could be at risk of losing the food aid, and 3 million adults with children or dependents could lose their benefits too, while another 2 million people between 50 to 64 who don't have dependents could lose access to food stamps. Many Americans are familiar with a 30% rule, which dictates that housing costs should never eat up more than 30% of your household. But it turns out the old rule of thumb has become unattainable for those that reside in an apartment these days. For the first time ever, American renters are spending that astronomical percentage or more. Moody's Analytics calls it a rent burden. Meanwhile, high mortgage rates have prevented Americans from making the leap from renter to homeowner. That in turn has meant a much shorter rental unit shortage, moving landlords to raise prices. This could spell disaster for more than 5 million households that are already behind the rent, owing an average of $2,000 in some areas. But according to Yahoo News, they own an estimated $11 billion in total rent debt. In some states, residents are already paying a little over a third of the salary on rent alone. In Massachusetts, Florida, New York, Americans spend over 30% of their income, respectively, on rent. And Moody's Analytics report that Florida in particular saw a substantial jump in rental cost, 4.2% over the last 3 years. And that's not helping the seniors that are in need of stimulus cash.
Underperformed among independents and moderates because their impression of many of the people in our party and leadership roles is that they're engulfed in chaos, negativity, and excess attacks, and it frightened independent and moderate Republican voters. Listen to